loud.
Ooh.
I don't even know what that means.
Hey
guys.
I'm Elle.
And this is the Cynical Therapist.
Yes.
Speaking of cynical, yesterday was it yesterday was election day? I'm getting my days mixed up.
Yesterday and today. I mean, I am blown away by all of it.
I don't even honestly, I have to be honest, I don't know what's happening. I see the numbers, right? Like there's a blue box and a red box, and I see the numbers, but I know that, just because one number, it's like pulling a slot machine. Just because you get a win doesn't mean the next 3 polls you're going to get a win. There's different electoral numbers in every state.
And it feels like it's kind of one of those impossible math things. It's almost like gambling, where everything is impossible math. Every time I see stuff, I'm like, what does that mean? What do these numbers mean? And so it's like ramping up my anxiety because I don't know like the process or statistically how any of this happens. All I have is my own like kind of dumb inference of the world, where it's like, it's a lot. And I think that a lot of my clients are reporting anxiety. A lot of my clients are having relationship discord and feeling a lot of depression and being overwhelmed by kind of the unknowns. So a lot of anxiety.
Family discord just from talking about politics and being divided on multiple issues.
Everything, and now like I was kind of talking about this to my husband, but it was like, how do we undo what's been done? Like, where do we go from here? Because it feels like, again, it polarizes a lot of stuff. And so, and I've been reading so many articles on how families are affected by politics now. And I'm sure you've experienced it in therapy. I've experienced it in therapy where it's like, how do you talk about something you're not supposed to talk about?
Sure.
Fix something you're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like families right now, would be more comfortable talking to their teenagers or family about sex than they would about politics in this climate. It's like,
yes. Yes.
Well, then let's at least talk about that.
Please do something. Uncomfortable moments. Yeah, no, I think that's dead on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of families that can't be labeled because you're not allowed to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So it's like setting off all of these different loops in like family systems where it's like it's anger and it's tension and it's like irritability, but it's all day, every day. And there's no fixing it and there's no end in sight. And it's like tearing up people and it sucks.
And there's some kind of crazy, like myself included. And when I use the word crazy, because I use it sparingly, right? But I was curious, I've never asked any of my family members. I know who my parents vote for. I've never asked either of my sisters who they're voting for. And for some reason, and this is like the thing you were talking about, pulling the slot machine, I just wanted to know who they voted for. And it's like, who cares? I've never asked them in the past.
Right.
So I think of what that makes me think of is, I don't know if you watched The Social Dilemma yet.
Yeah, told a couple times I should.
So amazing. But it talks about how when you, with your smartphone, when you scroll down and it reloads, that's like pulling a slot machine, And so I think I have never seen this much push to vote ever, right? Like vote, everybody vote, right? It's on Instagram. And maybe that's because social media and all that stuff is bigger, but I find it really interesting and kind of like the slot machine thing of why do I care? Like I've never cared before, like to each their own. I've never asked my siblings who they voted for. But the fact that it's even on the forefront of our minds and it never has been before, it's like, who's telling us to pull the lever?
Totally. And why does it matter so much now?
Why?
Exactly. And that's, I mean, I built in a lot of stuff with a lot of the people that I work with where it's like, how do I model for them exactly what you're talking about, where I'm exploring with them, but I'm not judging them on which side they, fall on. And that's been hard to negotiate because I feel very strongly about women's rights and I feel very strongly about, I have 3 daughters and it feels like an emergency to me to be like worried about their potential reproductive rights. But
And
it's
I
like,
think to a lot of women, it feels like, right, it feels like that emergency. Sure.
but is it an emergency? And how will I ever know if it's an emergency? You know, because I feel like I'm in an interesting predicament where I can think to myself, and this is even terrible to say to myself out loud, that I won't be as affected by the political outcome as I would be 15 years ago, as I would be 15 years from now. So how am I able to constitute an emergency in a time where there's nothing to compare it to? And where did the emergency come from? Is it an emergency? Should I be like,
But that's,
oh, my pussy hat, you know what I mean? Like, oh,
yeah.
where do I have to be? Can I
Yeah.
be a and still feel like I'm doing, you know, my daughter's justice? Or do I have to be there at an 8, like throwing blood on abortion people? You know what I mean? Like, or pro-life people being like, I have to be crazy about this. But it's like,
Sure.
what
And
am I
when we're
supposed
talking, if we talk, right, what do I do and where did the emergency come from, right? And not talking about the context, right, of the, if we can even call them debates.
right.
I felt like as a therapist that I was in a marital session and I wanted to support the couple of Jared Trump.
Same way. I had to leave and I was outside throwing the ball for the dog because I was like, this is the worst couples therapy.
Right,
Like,
because you can't, it's like if I could hand like a ball or a stuffed animal, and you can only talk if you have the stuffed animal, but you know that Trump would be sitting there holding the stuffed animal, still talking.
totally. Totally. And it's
Which
like,
is fascinating because my bipolar schizoaffective, those are the clients that have no awareness that they're still talking while they're holding, not to diagnose him or Joe, but there's a lot going on there with them and the debates were, I was excited about the questions the mediator asked. The mediator is someone from Fox News, and conservative liberal media, I don't know. I haven't watched the news since 2002. The only reason I know that is because that's how he introduced himself. But he was very well spoken, and he seemed very knowledgeable of all the policies that he had read. And I was so excited to hear the answers. So I had all these expectations that were unmet.
yeah, right? Right.
And so I think that's when you said, where did the state of emergency come? It almost feels like it came from there. It's like mom and dad, right, are fighting.
How do I fix it?
How do I fix it?
I behave in such a way where everybody gets their needs met, being that weird, like sick parentalized child that I am, where it's like mom and dad are fighting. How do I like grapple for middle ground? And what no middle ground anymore? Where it's like, you can't like confidently say I'm in the middle on these issues because it doesn't feel like there's a middle anymore. It's either right or wrong, black or white, like red or blue, or you know what I mean? It's like there's no like, well, maybe if I sat with you and talked to you about that, I could change my mind, or you could educate me on why what I'm saying is wrong, instead of it being you're wrong and you're a bad person. You know, instead of a teaching moment, because there are some things I'm not like well versed on. Like there's things I feel passionate about because they affect me, but I don't want to be the person that only votes on the things that affect me, because that's, I mean, essentially selfish, right?
Well, and that's like all the and the social dilemma talks about this, all the idea of fake news and how quickly it spreads, right? But it's fascinating when I hear even my nephew, right? When I hear him say, "Oh, well, this is who I would vote for." He's not of voting age. This is who I would vote for, and this is why. But there's statements, right, that haven't necessarily been founded in fact, but probably are, right, all over social media, or are all over the news, or are being repeated, right, by people, or tweeted, right? I mean, like they're there, and we take those for truth.
Without any investigation. It's kind of like if it plugs into how I feel about the world, then it becomes truth. But it's like, I don't think people grow in those situations. I think we grow when like what I believe about something gets challenged by somebody who I respect and admire. And they can be like, well, these are the things that I believe. Because I'm like, I straddle a lot of things where it's like, I don't know how I feel about the death penalty. I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I understand that people are monsters. I love a good monster, but I also don't know how I feel about a city killing a criminal. And that's weird to me, but I don't have a passionate plea either way. I understand both sides. So if somebody were to sit with me and be like, the reason I oppose the death penalty is because of this, that would be so good. But I just don't have those experiences because I'm supposed to have this firm belief and understanding, and it has to be rooted in fact, and I have to be passionate and like crazed.
Well, and
Agree with
it's interesting hearing you say it has to be rooted in fact, because I think of, I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is. He wrote the 12 steps. Yeah. So there's this, right? Because I went to a university. I was there in 2002. Kind of ironic because it was in Indiana, but a very liberal university, right? A very conservative state. But I remember going to class and being able to have really great discussions, right? About how we felt different about different views, different cultures, right? And it not be an emotional thing, which now hearing you say it has to be rooted in fact, maybe that's where there's been this slow burn in the university where call out culture, where now, right, if the professor says something offensive or the student next to me says something offensive, even if it's their opinion and we want to have a debate about it, we cannot because
because it's like the sick family system boundaries where nobody ever talks about like the rules, but everybody understands that these rules are here, but everybody has different sets of rules and the rules are never discussed. But it was like understanding by trying to read body language and like assess a tone in a room. So it's almost like we're put on an emotional alert in order to find facts. And those like, my head and my heart don't talk at all. Like I have to introduce them every single morning. Where I'm like, brain meet heart. Like you don't have to intellectualize everything. And for me, my premium is on information. If I have all the information I need to make an informed decision, I feel very confident in my decision. But again, I go back to where does the information come from, and why do I need information to make up my mind?
Sure.
People are like, I have this gut feeling, and I'm like, I have a gut feeling, and I read 17 articles, and I'm also obsessively stalking them on Twitter. You know what I mean? Like all of these different things. Still don't know how I feel about it.
Which is honest, right? I don't know that most people know information-wise or fact-wise why they feel about it, right? It's just there's this emotion. Yes. There's this emotion, and we're literally all standing in front of the slot machine, just waiting to get 3 matching and seeing what comes. You know, there is this just social anxiety, right? Like
there's something from it. And that's what, like with my clients, I ask them what the feed is. Like, what's the feed? Like, why are you doing this? Because we do what we do until it stops working. And this is the kind of stuff that we've been doing for 4 years straight. You know what I mean? Like as soon as the last election happened, it was like everybody was militarizing for the next election. And that felt so far away. And here it is. Like, and I remember I was a new mom, like Nash is almost 5. And now it's like that thing where it's like, oh shit. What I thought was important 4 years ago is still just as important, and I haven't done shit about it. And I remember the feeling 4 years ago, like that dread. I had like dread, doom, and I was like, I need to do something about it. And I've never done anything about it. I've just continued to think that thing, I need to do something about it. And it's like, maybe that's what's propelling me for that. I don't know, like the feed. What am I gonna, when I finally reach my decision on how I feel about something, am I going to get like is that a corner piece of my puzzle where I'm like, oh yes, I'm much more evolved as a human. Like, I don't know like why I care about having an opinion that I can display to others, you know? And I feel like that's probably social media.
Probably.
So I don't want to fit, or I don't want to be called out. I don't want to have the wrong decision and then have people see that I'm imperfect, you know, like, oh, God forbid. Publicly imperfect.
Let's just put a filter on that.
Hell no.
No, because I think it was interesting hearing you say the word dread, because the last 4 years, and I might, whatever, get called out or annoy somebody when I say this. But again, I haven't watched the news since 2002, personal opinion. And that was around the time I joined the military. And that was right. If you're going to maybe go to war, like watching more on television isn't the brightest thing to do. But this is the first time, probably about like 60 days ago, I'd say a couple of months ago. And obviously I have a new son as well, right? He's 3 months. I started feeling this dread, like the same kind of like anxiety and worry you get when you're going to get deployed to war. But there's a combination, right, of all these things that are happening, like what we're watching in the debates. And then I watch the social dilemma and all this stuff. And so, I mean, there's just I pause for a second and I can't do anything else but pray about it. I'm just so worried there's going to be riots no matter who wins. And that's the kind of stuff that happens in the Middle East, that happens right when we're lighting things on fire and we're blowing things up and it's the first time I felt that kind of dread in a really long time. And I think that divide is unfortunate. Like even before 9/11, we didn't have that much of a divide. We were forgetting as a country, right, who we were, but then that patriotism came back. And I just hope that happens. I miss that connection.
I think it's kind of where we started this conversation with the breaking away of families, how everybody's kind of like drifted apart, maybe reforming. Because I found that a lot of my like younger couple clients are like, how do I deal with my mom and dad who have differing political opinions? How do I exist in a world where I believe that my parents are basically fascists? And it's like, oh, honey, like every parent is a fascist. like, you shouldn't be worried about that stuff. You should be making your own shit with your own man and your own little like life. This is the way away from people. And I think that politics has overshadowed like that healthy separation of families. Like you're supposed to get married and have your kids and kind of break away from the family system. And I know like both of us have figured out how that works, but people are like kind of umbrella-ing the tension of politics over like perfectly natural family involvement. I'm like, what if it's not politics? What if it's convenient to like blame the fact that your mom, you know, has a Trump flag in front of her house over the fact that you don't want to go over there anymore? Maybe you just don't want to go to your mom's house.
Yeah.
Totally okay.
Maybe it's like this natural, like as I hear you say that, like this natural like way things have to happen because so when couples like in some of the therapies like EFT, Gottman, all that stuff, when you fight with your partner, right, you're moving towards them. It's a way to get them to pay attention. So we've been on these for so long, just like mindlessly not paying attention to anybody. And then we look up and we're like, wait, you're wearing that hat or you're representing, let's talk about that. Like, let's have a fight. And it's like this polarization is also bringing families together. Maybe not for the good.
Like, who knows?
Starting to have conversations at the dinner table again.
Totally, even if it is just that stuff where it's like that elephant.
Yeah.
And it's like every family's so different on the way they're working on it. And it's fascinating to me that people are willing to break up an entire family system over a political party. That's amazing to me. Because before it's like, well, yes, your grandfather did sexually abuse your mother, but he's your grandpa. You know what I mean? And now it's like, my mom voted for this person, so we're not ever letting her see our children again.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, how fast was that? Like, that was a crazy escalation. Because I remember that not that long ago where people were like, well, you know, yeah, well, he's just not allowed around the children by himself. And I'm
or like our grandparents, like, well, your grandpa would sleep with other women, but you know, we didn't get divorced back then.
We didn't. What? Like, what are you talking about? So now it's almost like we have this really convenient umbrella to put over everything, and we can totally blame it on that, or we can say, hey, maybe this whole time we've been ridiculous and nobody knows what the fuck they're doing, and maybe this is just a culmination of that. A bunch of people kind of blindly wandering the desert and then meeting up, being like, where did we all come from? It's like, does that even matter anymore? Like, can we start over from this? How do we safely in the anger and animosity built into a family relationship? Because for me, my dad, it was very obvious who he was voting for. It was very, very obvious, like to me this whole time. He's very conservative. He's a police officer. He's like, you know, he's the thin blue line. So I would have been surprised if he didn't vote conservatively, but it has not occurred to me to be angry about that. You know, I'm just like, that's he is. He's that guy. Of course he would. It's not a surprise to me. And I think in that moment where they're surprised that their family members are behaving a sort of way, I'm like,
haven't your family members been voting the same party line for the last 30 years? Like, what are you talking about?
Now it means something different. Now, like, it comes with this, like whatever, semi-truck of information. Like, if you vote this way, it's not that you are voting this way. It's that you accept the fact that we're going to put children in cages, or you like to murder babies when they're full term. Like, but it's not that, where it's like that thing where it's like, that's just information. Those are just like pieces of, like, those are words that were kind of like, I don't know, like, whatever, powder kegging it. So I can finally be angry at my dad for the right reason. Because of values, not because he was a fucking asshole, or not because he was like a bad dad, or that I just don't like him, but it's like, now it's because I'm a person with values, and that's why I don't like my dad. It's like, or maybe you guys just didn't like each other, and this is a really great reason to separate for a minute or forever.
And figuring out, now that you have values and you're separating from these people, where are those values coming from?
Totally.
Did you just pick those up along the way, or are those like deep-rooted values that you feel very, very passionate about and have? Like, let's look back. Have you felt passionate about these? How'd you feel 8 years ago? Okay. Like, let's look at the whole picture and where you're developing those values from.
Exactly. And is it okay to break away from your family if you don't line up with them value-wise? 100%. It's also okay to break away from your family if you don't like them as people. Those are all your choices. But I go back to tell yourself the truth about it. Is it really about politics? Or has this been a long time coming? Where it's like, you know what? I really don't want my kids to be at my grandma's house because she calls Black people coloreds. Like, that is a totally appropriate and reasonable thing to say now.
Yes.
It wasn't 20 years ago, you know? And some people would be like, well, that's your grandma. She can't help it, or whatever. But it's like, if you truly in your heart of hearts cannot tolerate the feeling of your child being exposed to something that your grandmother might say, that is your right as a parent to keep that child out of there. Like, what do you do with the feelings after that? Like, how do you explain it to your Facebook group? Oh, my grandma supports Trump, and everybody's like, yeah, burn her house down, you know? And you're like, oh, I feel totally good about this decision. Instead of like, I don't like the way my grandma said this one thing this one time. People will be like, I can't believe you're taking your children away from her. I mean, those are her grandchildren. Yeah. So it's like, parse it out. I love what you said. 4 years ago, did you give a shit about this? I mean, I probably gave some shits, but I don't feel any different. I feel the same set of, I don't know if it's doom, I don't know if it's dread, but it's like maybe it's just consequence, right? Where it's like, these are the consequences, and I'm so powerless. I'm so powerless.
The powerlessness of it all. Sure.
Where I'm like, I don't know if it's going to end, when it's going to end, or if it should end, or should we have this very diametrically opposed system where people get to argue passionately, but hopefully not set each other's houses on fire and like bring out the militia? Like, can we have concourse? Can we explore and, you know, have great ideas and without it being like this? I don't know. I don't know if that's ever a possibility anymore. So it feels like it's definitely not a possibility right now.
Well, and again, like when I look at it as a family system, I'm like, nobody's listening to anybody, right? Who's the first person not listening? Like, totally. I don't, again, like, not to pick a party side, but I'm just like, that debate was painful. And I don't know if it's stonewalling or what it's called. I know we have a clinical term for it, but it's like, just I just let him answer. Like, again, had to walk away, right? Because and politics aside, if it was a couple and one of them kept interrupting when it was the other turn to talk, I mean, that's a really tough situation, because just like the mediator, when you ask that person again, right, these are the rules we've set of this therapy session. This is what I'm asking you to do. But then they don't listen, right? I mean, as a therapist, I would more than likely be referring them or starting individual, right? And it's like, we're talking about people running the country who can't even have a conversation without interrupting each other. Like,
it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me. But it's also the exact same thing all the time. And like, I've been watching Donald Trump for a very long time. Sometimes I can't tolerate his voice, because my husband will listen to him saying stuff, and it's like embarrassing when he says stuff. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, that's our president. Oh my God, oh my God. But also being able to be like, ooh, that was my bully uncle up there on the stage. Oh shit, that was my dad up there on the stage. You know what I mean? And it was a very like kind of distorted caricature of this toxic male that I have lived with a million times. I've had as a boss a million times. And it was like not just a debate to me. It was like, oh my God, like I got to check in with all my clients that have like battering husbands or have a DV history. Like, how are you feeling? Are you super overwhelmed by this? And a lot of them were very triggered by these events, triggered by seeing the behavior and the argumentativeness and like the lack of control. And it goes back to that sick family system. If you are exposed to a person who can never have a conversation, who's always right, I mean, that leads to disorganized attachment. Right? Where you can't get your needs met, you're set up to fail in every path of the way. So it's almost as though everybody surrounding him has become like battered women. And that's been fascinating to me, where I'm like, wow, okay, so they're all in that gaslight loop. They're all like, they're going to go to the bitter end with this guy. And it's like, wow, there's like a level of, I don't want to say respect, because that's not the feeling, but it's like, holy smokes, that's scary to me.
Yeah.
Like a cult leader, and that's frightening.
Yeah. And we've talked about, right, and that's the whole, like, yes, like a cult leader. Like, what were some of the I'm thinking of like Jonestown. What was the one?
Koresh Davidians, like David Koresh.
Yeah, it's like, just all and I had to look it up after, just some of the actual political ideas, right? Like the fracking and all that stuff. The words he just kept repeating, right? If I repeat this word enough, people are going to start to believe that this is exactly what Joe stands for. But if you go back and read the policies and all that stuff on either side, but you right? That's the gaslighting. I have to say, wait, is this actually what's happening? But because I'm so stuck in it, I don't even believe myself.
Exactly. I clearly am wrong, because these people feel so about this thing. And there's that thing for me where I'm like, well, what if I don't have all the information? What if I don't know what this is, right? Because I don't have a face-to-face view of what's actually going on. I don't understand politics as well as I understand people. And the people that I see are suffering. Like, it's like the faces I see are suffering. Like, people are not looking well. It feels like a huge distraction from what's actually going on. And that to me is just like, oh, that's an abusive dad. Like, that's like, right? And then tomorrow we get ice cream.
And yes. No, and we know what actually is going on, right? Because we're seeing it. Okay, whatever's going on politically, okay. But in mental health, in our offices, and now seeing people in our homes, we are very busy. And right, we're not a profession that's like, oh, thank goodness, I'm so busy, I have a full week of clients. Like, we want people to get better. We want to see people come in and go and stuff, but we've just seen this influx of people who are struggling, right, with anxiety, depression, relationship stuff, right? And it's disheartening. It's like, where did this come from? And I know that, right, COVID and being home, that kind of had something to do with it. But I think there's this beautiful thing about slowing down a little bit and spending some time with our families. It feels more like a lot of those people, and not to speak for everybody as a whole, Right. There's a different struggle there. It's not necessarily just like straight, I've been home for 8 months.
Yeah, it's always like I have these incredible emotional issues, and then butted up against that is like, I understand COVID, la la la. You know, it's not like I'm coming to therapy because of my COVID reaction. It's more like I'm coming to therapy because my whole world is falling apart and I'm watching it happen. And oh yeah, we've been in quarantine for 9 months, which is like, if that is the last of your problems, like, oh my God, like that should be like, we have been stuck in homes for 9 months instead of, yeah, everything's falling apart. Plus also there's that. It's
I mean,
like,
they're
oh,
boarding up LA, like getting ready for riots. Like that's like, I didn't want to go outside. And this is like legitimately, I did not want to go outside yesterday. I was like, I'm just going to stay inside.
completely relate. My husband's up in the mountains right now, and we had to come down here just because I have to re-up. I have to bring in all the mail. I have to get my meds because I was running low on meds. And then I'm like driving down the mountain with 3 dogs and 3 kids being like, am I going to be driving into a civil war? Which is insane. Like, I'm like, I couldn't even believe I had that thought. Where I was like, well, I'm glad we have a gun and I know where it is. And I went home and I checked my gun. Like, who am I right now? Where I'm like, it's election night. That's insane. It's supposed to be like this patriotic, like this incredibly hopeful event. But I feel like, dude,
it's just fear-based. It's all fear-based now. It's funny that you said that because I had the same thought. I just had because we don't have a gun. But to my husband, I was like, I was like, I just feel this need like to have one in the house right now. And like, what?
Exactly.
It must be how people feel when they want to like have a bunker in case like the world's going to end.
Yes, exactly. And it's kind of that diet bunker. Like when you have a gun, it's a diet bunker. It's essentially saying that I will be able to tolerate the way I feel if I kill somebody, if they come into my home. And I've never been able to say that I would be able to be okay with that until now. And I don't know what that means, where it's like, if somebody comes in, I mean, of course I have a German Shepherd. She would kill them before anybody would, but I would feel completely at a loss if I wasn't there to protect my family, which is so far beyond anything I've ever experienced. I mean, I understand as a mother you're supposed to, but I did not expect a freaking crossbow to be part of the motherly package, like the diaper bag.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's real, and I don't know if it's imagined. I go back to that, like, what is the emergency? Where did this come from? How am I so afraid?
I don't know if we should do that. We should make a timeline and try to trace back where this emergency started, because I mean, you're right. It just feels like it's been happening. And
yeah,
but that's kind of what happens, right? With the abusive relationship, when we're talking about the gaslighting and stuff like that, you're in the house and you don't realize it, right? It's like that movie, Big Eyes. Is that what it was called?
Oh yeah. With the painter.
Yeah. Like she didn't realize it, right? Until she was so deep into it. So here we are deep into it, but we're still not realizing it. Most of us aren't.
No, I mean, I consider that a privilege to not know.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, I have a privileged life where no matter which election sways, I will be okay. But I do know there are people that are starving, that haven't had a paycheck in 9 months. You know what I mean? Who are fucking dying, and their kids are starving, and they're going to work every day and exposing, people to a virus they might not be able to survive because they have no other means. And I've been there, and I've been broke, and my heart breaks for those people who are forced to do something desperate. And like, what else do you expect for people to do? If you are treated like an animal, you're going to behave like an animal. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is happening. Like, but again, remember, they boarded up stuff for the Lakers playoff and stuff like that.
Yes.
Lakers, yeah. I feel like, yeah, there's that. Yeah.
There's also that. It's like the Dodgers stadium. No offense to the Dodgers fans.
Totally how it is, where it's like LA, we're like, yay, we won, let's go fuck shit up. Yay, we lost, let's go fuck shit up. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
It reminds me of growing up in Indiana. Like, let's go like smash mailboxes. Like, what? Why are we in the back of a Ford Ranger smashing people? Like, what?
What are we doing? For what? What's the feed? Like, because this is fun? Because it's not fun.
It's not fun.
Oh, and you might get in trouble. So there's kind of like, I got away with something cool. So there's kind of that mischief piece. But like growing up in LA, that's a felony. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, would be in a really big, scary place if I was caught doing stuff like that. But maybe that's the better part of living in the country.
Yeah. It's harder to get caught.
See?
What is everybody doing in the country these days? So I wanted to go over so you were interviewed by Grit Daily News.
Okay.
And the article was titled "How to Stay Okay This Election Season,"
Mhm.
and it was beautiful.
Like, yeah.
Just
I
very, very well said. And I don't know if you can sum up, yeah, a couple things of what you kind of either with that or what you're kind of thinking for how, yeah, people can stay
sane.
okay with their mental health. Yeah, while this is
I
all going on.
do like that overall thing where, I watch the news and they're like, make sure to take time for yourself and meditate and do all that shit. And it's like, nobody's doing that. Everybody's kind of crisis driven right now. There's this thing that's said in Al-Anon all the time was where go where the love is and try to find people who are consistently supportive of you and talk to them instead of going to the lion's den of your family and like striking that match, like, what do you think of this? And they're like, whoosh, like we don't know what's going to happen. Remember
Yeah.
that you have you that are loving and care for you and want the best for you. And when you're struggling, go to those people. Don't go to the people who are consistently tearing you down or the people who started the whole thing in the first place. If you don't have that luxury, mindful meditation, always focusing on what you have control over, internal locus versus external locus, where it's like, is this anxiety because I feel powerless or am I really powerless? What can I do? Instead of why do I feel this way? It's like, what can I do to reduce these feelings? Like, I feel worried about children, right? Well, today I'm going to go help 2 children, or today I'm going to volunteer at a preschool. I'm worried about women and the reproductive rights. I'm going to call my friend that's pregnant and see how she's doing and check in with her and tell her that she's valuable to me. And just having those little tiny rituals where it's like, these are upsetting things, but what can I do in my little tiny sphere that'll improve things? Because if you think globally, especially with anxiety, oh my God, like you can't, like you're one vote. Like,
Yeah.
we know how, or it's like insignificant. So I guess maybe the word would be to create significance. If you're worried about babies, go hold a baby. If you're like upset about, the teachers and what the teachers have gone through, send a box of donuts to the school if you can.
That's great. I love that.
So it's like, yes, globally things might be scary, but locally, like there's still homeless people. There are still people that are struggling to get fed. There are plenty of opportunities to actually do things locally if you try not to think so globally. And I think that's helpful for reducing anxiety. But also, your community building stuff, your churches, your meetings, your groups, your Zoom cocktail parties and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And staying off of social media as much as possible. I was like,
I know.
I'll give myself 2 hours on the weekend. Like I'll do 2 hours, but I'm like, where did those 2 hours go? It's so fast and it's like gone. And I'm like, what just happened? Like I was in some weird
Where
world.
am
I don't
I?
know where am I?
Well, according to the social dilemma, it's a weird world.
Totally like like a 4-dimensional dissociation, where I get to like just cruise this imaginary world. But it's like, is that helpful? No. I come right to the phone, I come right back to the dishes, I come right back to the laundry, I come right back to the children. That's like, well, what did that help? That just set me back 2 hours.
Yep.
I got shit to do.
Yeah, I love that. And you said they asked if there was anything else readers should know about mental health right now. And I love what you said. You said you are not crazy. You just have some old skills that need some fine tuning.
Yeah.
Which is so great.
We talked about that earlier with the family system stuff. Is like some of the stuff doesn't work anymore. And our body's telling us with anxiety, with depression, with like reactions like that something's wrong. But you can't just say something's wrong and then just stay in there. You have to be like, something's wrong. How can we improve it? How can we fix it? If it's a 10, how do we get it to a 9? If it's a 1, how do we get it to a 2? Like, how do we push this thing forward? But it's like, if you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
If nothing changes, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think, like I said, there's a lot of need out there. So I think picked up 3 or 4 new clients recently. So we'll also put the contact number for Centered and let people know who has openings and stuff like that. But I do think what you said, just people reaching out, to not trying to fuel anybody's fire, just, yeah.
Check it in.
Yeah.
Like just,
The holidays are coming, right? The holidays are coming. This is a great time just to, like, you know, try to be with family, the time of giving, right?
yeah,
Like thinking about other people.
being thankful, right? And donating your time if you have time to donate, donating your money if you have money to donate. Like, I don't feel like I can walk out and feel safe in the world right now because of COVID or whatever, but I can donate. I can, like, send money to a school. I can Venmo my girlfriend who's doing this poetry thing with the kids in her neighborhood. I'm like, I can do that. And I feel good about stuff like that, where it's like, I can't be there, but how can I help? How can I
Yeah.
support it without putting me in a position where it's actually a gift of love instead of feeling strapped after I give my gift of love and then being resentful about that?
You mean not codependency?
Yeah, I guess.
That's
All right,
such a great idea. Well, I'll post this article that you did, and I miss seeing you in the same room.
it's like, I haven't gotten to hold your baby, and that blows my mind.
I know. Oh, he's so cute. He's getting so big.
He's like probably giggling a little, huh? Like
They
almost
grow
laughing.
so fast in the beginning. I'm like, wait, what? You're 14 pounds. You're not supposed to be like 35 until you're 2. So what's going to happen?
Once they walk, it all comes off.
That's what I think my mom told me that the other day. Yeah, somebody told me that.
Yeah, they're chubby until they start walking, and then
Yeah.
they just, yeah.
I thought that was going to happen with pregnancy, where if I just started walking, it would all go away.
Oh my gosh, where did this gown come from? It's so glamorous to be pregnant. Yeah.
You know what? We should start like a larger or pregnant woman's channel, because when I turn on like Pilates or something, and you know, this skinny,
Right. She's all ripped.
I'm
She's like,
like, I know that you're 18 to 25, but you look amazing.
and I
I
hate
used
you.
to look like that once, and you'll understand one day.
Like, yeah, no, exactly.
One
They do.
day.
They need to have like normal people, athletic, like supervisors. They need to have normal looking people instead of those hot chicks all the time. So I relate to that.
I relate. Oh, well, thank you. Well, yes, we will do this again soon. And yes, I hope our topics are helpful to people, and we'll keep chugging them along.
Yeah, I've gotten a few from Twitter, and I'll send them your way.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'll throw them out there to see. I mean, there was something on narcissism where I was like, you can just check our library on narcissism. It's already in there. So
Score.
right.
And I'm going to figure this out, because I love what you have going on back there.
Gotta get the
And
boss.
so you're like what do we call you? Like the sassy or the cynical side, right? And I'm like, okay, love the tattoo. What would mine, think about this. What would mine be? I think of like something girl next door-ish, or I mean, like, I don't want to say basic bitch because I hate that, but here I am drinking my Starbucks and I don't even care.
Very jealous. Well, think about it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. So next time everybody will get to see you. All right. Miss you,
All right.
girl.
I miss you too. I'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.